This is a little con support video on scale drawings. So it says the scale on a map shows that 2.5 centimeters represents 15 kilometers. So this one I'm going to actually do with notes for you guys, so you guys can see kind of how to write everything out. So the general way when we talk about map, I think it makes a lot of sense just to make sure you understand the ratios involved. So we're talking about the value on the map compared to the value in the world, right? That's the ratio we're talking about, map to world. Or world to map, either way. So you can think of it as map to world like that, or you can think of it as world to map. It really just depends on what your output and input are, right? So let me like this. So in general, though, you would normally input the world and output the map. So that means that your general rule would be the mapping the output, right? And it's based off of the world, which is the input, right? You input the world, you output the map. So generally, we put map on top, map over world. So it says a scale on a map shows that 2.5 centimeters represents 15 kilometers. So what that means is that 2.5 centimeters is equivalent to 15 kilometers. So that's your ratio of map to world. It says what number of actual kilometers are represented by 17.5 centimeters on the map. So on the map, you have the numerator being now 17.5 centimeters. We don't know the distance on the real world. That's x kilometers. So you're just solving this proportion. 2.5 over 15 is the same as 17.5 over what? And so when you solve the proportion, I think the easiest way to do that is just to do 2.5x is equal to 17.5 times 15. Then you can divide both sides by 2.5. And I think we can see that 2.5 times 2 would be 5. So 5 times 3 is 15. So it's basically times 2 and then times 3. So it's times 6, right? So 6 2.5 is 15. So you can cancel that and say 1 and 6. And then you just have a 17.5 times 6 to get your answer. So x is going to be equal to 17.5 times 6. So what's 17 times 6 plus 5 tenths of 6, or half of 6? So you're looking at 10 times 6, which is 60, 7 times 6, which is 42, and then you're adding to that a half of 6, which is 3. So really you're looking at the sum of all that, which is 102 plus 3, or 105. So what that tells you is that it's 105 kilometers in the real world. The only key here is to make sure that you understand map on top, world on bottom. The map values all go on top then, the world values all go on bottom, and create your proportion. All right, this one says a little bit different situation here. So what does it go on about? It says Leonardo draws a cookie on a graph paper using the scale shown below. The cookie has a diameter of 12.5 centimeters in the drawing. Which of the following drawings best represents the diameter of the cookie at the scale that Leonardo chose? Oh, okay, interesting. All right, so let's take a look at this here. So when you're looking at this one, let me kind of zoom in. It's hard for me to see. All right, so it says he draws a cookie on a graph paper using the scale shown below. The cookie has a diameter of 12.5 centimeters in the drawing. Which of the following drawings best represents the diameter of the cookie at the scale Leonardo chooses? So the drawing should be 12.5 centimeters. This is a weird problem. Okay, so I don't really know but exactly what they're going for here. I'm going to try to talk you through it because it's a little bit awkward the way they're asking this. So there's no world here. They're not telling you what the real cookie's length is. They're just saying which drawing is like drawing such that the cookie has a diameter of 12.5 centimeters in the drawing. Well, if we look at the scale here on this drawing, 2 lengths is equal to 5 centimeters. So every single length is equal to 2.5 centimeters. So is there any way in which this number of lengths would be equal to 12.5 units? I'm not even sure what the units mean here, but let's take a look. You can see. So if we're looking at the length of this cookie, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so yeah, so this is 12.5 units, fair enough. 2 units is 5 centimeters. So 12 and a half units would be 12 and a half times 5 centimeters. So you'd be talking about a huge number for the cookie, 12 and a half basically times 5. Well, it'll be 12 and a half divided by 2 and then times 5. So 12 and a half divided by 2 is 6.25, which is the number of double lengths that you have. And then 6.25 times 5, which is over 30, would be the centimeters for the cookie. So this one's not going to be correct. You want the cookie to be 12 and a half centimeters. And that's for the diameter. That means the length from one edge to the other. So this is incorrect. This one is, the 2 is 5 centimeters, so that means each one's 2.5. So 5 units of 2.5 would be 2.5 times 5. 2.5 times 5 is going to be 2 times 5, which is 10, and then half of 5 is 2.5. So this one looks good. So if you multiplied the length of each of these segments is 2.5, 2.5 times the 5 units, you get 12.5 centimeters. So this looks like the right answer. If there's only one answer, that's the correct answer. This one would be 2 lengths, that's 2.5 each length, right? Because 2 length is 5, each one length is 2.5. So this is 2.5 units, so it'd be 2.5 times 2.5, and that's going to be 6.25, so that's not going to be correct. So the best answer is B. That's what I think are going for here. A very funny question, though, the way they worded that, because normally you'd be talking about the real length of the cookie compared to the map of the cookie. And here it's just map. It's like drawing to drawing. Like, did they draw it correctly? Like, which one's drawn it at a scale? Which one's drawn correctly, I guess, if they wanted the drawing to be 12.5 centimeters. All right, let's see the next one. A scale on a hiking map shows that 3 inches represents 1.25 miles. This is better. This is more like a real world problem you solve. Okay, so let's take a look at this one. So in this situation, right, once again, you've got a hiking map and you've got the real world stuff. So this is once again map to world. So you're looking at the map value on top, the world value on bottom. So let's just set up our ratios and solve our proportion. So it says a hiking map shows that 3 inches represents 1.25 miles. So 3 inches on the map represents 1.25 miles in the world. That's the relationship. So what number of inches on the map represents 10 actual miles? So if we change the miles to 10, what would happen to the inches on the map? So that's the proportion you're solving. So literally this is just 3 times 10 equals 1.25x, and then divide by 1.25 to both sides. And so it's just 30 divided by 1.25, and that will be your value for x. So on a calculator, you could just do that real quickly. You could say this is 30 divided by 1.25. And that's 24. So it means that x is 24 in this case, which means that the 10-mile distance in the world would be represented by a length that is 24 inches along the map. So you'd have 24 inches. Okay, this is another one of those drawing ones. Now I know what they're talking about. It's easier to identify. Serene draws a chick on graph paper using the scale shown below. The chick has a height of 5 centimeters in the drawing. So if you take a look at it, this one length is a half centimeter. So if you wanted you wanted a length of 5 centimeters, right? You'd have to have 10 of those lengths. So this is good. That one works because 10 times a half is equal to 5. So that's going to be 5 centimeters. This one would be a half, right? So then 2.5 halves is not going to be equal to 5. This one would be 5 units and a half each. So that's not going to be equal to 5. So the one that's equal to 5 centimeters is the first one. So that would be A. And that's kind of how you do that. All right, cool.